All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Torah on Tap. Tonight's conversation is a continuation of our series. We are talking about the elements. And last week we spoke about earth, and today we're going to try to tackle water. Now, if you are listening to the series, or if you missed parts of the series, and you're looking for other classes, you could go find them at youtube.com/Chazak. And all you got to do is look for elements. It's in the playlist. You'll find everything there. All my source sheets are tied to each one of the class descriptions as well. You'll find everything there. These sheets take a lot of time to make, so please be mindful that I do all of this because I truly believe in sharing the sources, because I want them to be yours and I don't want them to be mine. I'm a very big believer in empowering people to understand how the Torah operates, where these ideas come from, because if you understand the context of where they're from, I believe they add more meaning and value to our lives. So let's talk a little bit about the power of water, okay? Now, we know that water is tied to, on the soul level, to feeling, to emotion. It is the obstacle that often gets in the way of someone who is a water element is lust. The way in which we try to channel that is by pleasure and deep love and hope. And the people that personify this particular midah were both Isaac and Rebecca. We mentioned it a little bit last week. So the pasuk in Shir Hashirim says, "Ma'im rabim lo yochlu lechbot et ha'ava u'narot lo yishtafu." Right? We know that the floods cannot go ahead and put out or quench love, and nor rivers drown it. There's something profound about love. That love is the power of conquering all. Okay? Now, the truth is that, remember, with any midah, with any particular trait, a trait in any one extreme is a negative trait. And therefore, when we talk about midot, we talk about our traits, we're talking about always the healthiest expression of that trait. And when we talk about them in the extremes, they're there to help create the contrast, so we could actually find that middle ground, like the Rambam says, the Shvil HaZahav, that golden path that we're supposed to go ahead and bring into our own lives. So now let me start with a story. Imagine for the following, okay? You walk into a room, it's a beautiful banquet hall, beautiful chandeliers, candles, it's set up, it's stunning, it's gorgeous. And you have a long table with two chairs at the end of each table. And you have one guy walks in, a holy rabbi, saintly man, sits down in the first chair, and you're the waiter or waitress, and you put him down there, okay? And then you have the other side of the table, the second guy comes in. The first guy comes in and you say, okay, I'm going to bring you a tasting from everything here. This massive shmorg, it's stunning, it's gorgeous, steaks, kebabs, whatever you could possibly imagine, think about in terms of food-wise, the highest of the high, the creme de la creme of food. And you serve it to the first rabbi, and he looks at this food and he's like, oh, thank you so much for giving me this food. And he takes his fork and a knife and he starts cutting into the steak, and he looks at the steak and he says, Baruch Atah, and he's making a bracha, and it's slow and it's deliberate. You can see he has this big smile on his face. He's so excited. He's got drool coming out the side of his mouth, and he's waiting to go ahead and put that steak in his mouth. And then, you see this guy's doing his thing. It's taking a long time. It's a very slow bracha, baruch, like very slow. And in the meantime, she goes over to this other person that's sitting across the table, the other rabbi, holy rabbi number 2. And she says, Rabbi, what can I bring you? We have all these delicacies. And he looks at her. He's like, bring me a small amount of rice, something tiny, whatever it is. And like he looks at her, like gives her a sharp look, like, well, who do you think I am? Just going to come here like fresh to eat, to be gluttonous. Like, just give me the most minimalist amount of, whatever you need. I just need a little bit mizonot, a little shakol, and we're done. Right? 2 different approaches to how we understand, enjoying the pleasures of life. Now, I don't know about you, but I would be like the first rabbi, okay? And I would want to go ahead and enjoy that beautiful steak. But you are aware of the fact that within Judaism, you have this duality where there is this concept of, hey, of maybe doing with less, of holding back. Maybe you shouldn't get the biggest steak on the, you don't need the Wagyu beef, you don't need the tomahawk steak. Maybe you get something smaller, right? Maybe there's this idea of holding back. And the truth is that, in Judaism, you'll find these 2 different expressions so beautifully. So you have, on the one hand, you have the Mishnah in Perkei Avot that says, Kachi darka shel Torah, pat bemelech tochal. The way of a person who lives a Torah lifestyle is to have a little bit of bread in his pocket, umayim mishura tishteh, a little bit of water, va'al ha'ara tisha, and you sleep on the ground. Meaning, even a mattress, if you have a mattress, how many people here have mattresses? You're gluttonous people, right? All you do is think about pleasure and comfort. Shame on you, right? Because if you want to live a life of Torah, you'd be someone who has, and how many people had cheese on their bread tonight? Because according to this Mishnah, you're not living a Torah lifestyle. If you were really living a Torah lifestyle, you would take a knife, cut the cheese off, scrape off the, the sauce, find a little bit of salt, dip it into the bread, and that would be your meal. A little bit of water, you had soda, shame on you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyah bidbaro. Right? Because this Mishnah over here says very clearly that if you want to be someone who is living a life of Torah, you have to have a little bit of bread and salt, a little bit of water, and you sleep on the ground. This is how you live a life of Torah. Someone who wants real amelut, according to this Mishnah, is the second holy rabbi, sitting there asking, give me the minimalist amount that I could possibly have, and that's going to be my path. Now, that's one approach. There's another approach. There's a song that we sing on Shabbat called Yom Zeh Mechubad, right? And if you look at the translation, it's actually fascinating because it's a complete contradiction to this Mishnah, right? Yom Mechubad, right? Yom Zeh Mechubad, he says, eat, it doesn't matter. So what? Who says that there are people that are the minimalists, even the rabbis that are going to go out and be minimal, they'll eat a little bit, but it's still a little bit. They'll have a ta'am of basar, a ta'am of dagim. They won't have a big piece of fish. They won't have a big piece of steak. But this particular song, right, says, eat delicacies, drink sweet drinks, for God provides for all those who show devotion, clothes to wear, plentiful bread, meat, fish, and all sorts of delicious food. It's beautiful, right? So you could have anything and everything you could possibly want. Why not enjoy it? Why hold yourself back? So the question is, how do we find balance in this midah? Water is the midah for pleasure. It is the midah, it is the trait that drives us to all kinds of things. And the question is, well, if you have these duality within you, within the Torah itself, how do we find that balance? That's the question I want to throw out there tonight. And maybe in that path of us trying to understand the midah of water, we walk away with a little bit more. Now, Ben Zoma says, Ezu chacham ha-lomed mikol ha-adam, right? Mikol melamde, why? He says, Ezehi gibor, look at the bottom of there. We're at source number 5. He says, "Kovesh et yotzro." Who is the gibor? The gibor is someone who is kovesh his yetzer. He's kovesh. He conquers his inclination. Now, what does that mean to conquer your inclination? Okay, you have a king. Okay, you're all dictators, and you have a very powerful army, and you invade your neighboring country. Okay, and you take over. Okay, God bless you. What does conquering look like? Does conquering over there look like you having your army pointing the guns at the people saying you better do the laws? Is that actually conquering? Is that winning the war? Or is conquering when you've come in, set up new policies, and the people love you for everything that you've done? You've won them over. When we talk about being kovesh et yotzro, are we talking about having a battle with the Yetzer Hara and fighting it constantly, nonstop? Or are we talking about a strategy that allows us to kind of win over the Yetzer Hara and allow it to be our friend? What does it mean to be kovesh? Now it says the word that it uses, ezehu gibor. Gibor is a root word for gevura. Gevura is the same midah that is associated with which one of the avot? You guessed it, Yitzchak, right? Which is why we're going to talk about Yitzchak. Yitzchak is the man that is symbolic of gvura, which means boundaries, right? Boundaries. Relax, Isaac, relax. Okay, boundaries, right? That's what Isaac's superpower is. Isaac's superpower is that he understands boundaries. So now if you think of a man if you had to paint a picture of someone that was symbolic of gvura, of that midah of boundaries, what kind of a story, what kind of a character traits would you give him? Is he going to be the guy in the story, the first guy, or is he going to be the second guy? Second guy, right? But you're going to see that right now, we're going to relearn the story of Yitzchak, and he's really the first guy. And the question is why? If your natural midah is gevura, then you should be the second guy. Give me the small amount of rice. What are you looking? Well, give me the minimalist. Give me the floor, no mattress. Give me the little bit of salt and bread. Give me a little bit of water. That should be Yitzchak, but that's not Yitzchak. Pasuk says, right, when Yitzchak is asking Esav to bring him his meal. He says, "V'asli mima'atim kasher ahavti v'avi li v'ochal ba'avur t'verechecha nafshi b'terem amut." I want you to go prepare a dish of such that, and you bring it to me to eat, so that I can have my innermost blessings for you. Like, why is Yitzchak asking Esav to go ahead and bring him a meal to give him a bracha? It's like a weird thing. Like, Yitzchak is supposed to be the holiest of the avot, the most powerfully profound of all the avot, and yet he's asking him to go ahead and make him like a steak. Make a mistake. And by the way, before that I skipped. It says, "V'yav Yitzchak et Esav ki tzayad b'fi v'Rivka ohevet et Yaakov." Right? I want you to go ahead and explain this pasuk. He says that he loves Esav because he had a taste for game. Yitzchak, the pasuk says that he liked fresh meat. He was a meat guy. He was a carnivore, a keto diet. He was that rabbi. That's what Yitzchak was. Okay, and more than that, who did he love? He loved Esav. Esav comes to the word asui. He was complete. He was whole. He was charismatic. He was beautiful. He was handsome. He loved the chitzoni externalities of Esav. But a man with a gvura, a man with restraint, should be someone who's more humble. Maybe someone who is more inward focused. Like you would think that mitzad logic, that the person that he would love more would be Yaakov than Esav. And the question is, why? Why Esav? Why all the food? Bereshit, look at that. Lech na elatzon. V'kach li misham shnei gidei izim tovim. He didn't want one shawarma. He wanted two shawarmas. Right? Not one, two. I can't do two. Why is Yitzchak, this great guy, so obsessed with his food? It's interesting. Okay, great. Then it says, "V'yaveh Yitzchak ahola Sarah imo v'yikach et Rivka v'ti lo liisha v'yaveh v'yenachem Yitzchak achrei imo." This is a beautiful pasuk talking about the love that Yitzchak has for Rivka. Now it's interesting. You don't see these expressions of amore, of love, being described for Abraham and Yitzchak, Abraham and Sarah. Right? There's no mention of Abraham. He says that she's very beautiful, but it doesn't say anywhere that he loved her. That these very deep emotions that Yitzchak expresses, Ve'yahev Yitzchak et Esav, and with Rivka also, same thing, that she loves, what's it called? Yaakov. And over here, he's talking about how he brings Rivka into her tent, and he takes Rivka, and she becomes a wife, and they loved her, and they had this very deep, loving relationship. This is a strange thing. Now, it's even stranger if you think about it. Remember, everything, this whole conversation's within the context of, what element are we doing tonight? When you hear the word water and you think of Rivka, what else do you think of? The Be'er. Right? Think about everything about Rivka is about water. Eliezer meets her. Where is he? At the water, at the Be'er. The source of water. Right? The bracha, the barech. When you talk about a pool, right, in Hebrew, bracha comes from brecha. Baracha, it's the same root words. There's something about blessing that's connected to water, the shefa that's connected to water, and there's something else about love and emotions that are very much an expression of this midah of water. And Rivka is expressing that particular midah in the psukim itself. She goes to Yitzchak, Eliezer sees her, and what does he notice that's so special about Rivka's superpower? He asks her to do what? I want you to bring me water for my camels. So she's got to do the chesed, right? But that was Abraham. Abraham's trait was chesed. We spoke about it last week. Remember last week, what was the midah? Earth. And the midah of earth is to be slow. And what do you see in Abraham? He's always running, he's fast. V'yemaher, the opposite midah. Over here you have two people that are symbolic of this midah of water, and it's expressing itself also in opposites. He's gvura, but he's a loving guy. He's gvura, but he loves good shawarma, fresh game. Give me good meat. The opposite midah. Again, I'm just pointing it out to you. These are things that you've heard your whole life, but you haven't really been able to focus in on them. Rivka represents water. Yitzchak represents water. But they represent a healthy expression of what water is. Now, it's not an accident that the name Yitzchak was given to him by Abraham. Abraham gives him the name. The word Yitzchak comes from also, they rearrange the letters. You have a name called Ketz Chai, right? The end of all living things, right? Why was that name given to him? Because Abraham lived at the end of the Tower of Babel, right? He was 54 years old when the tower was destroyed, okay? And he was also around when Noach was alive. There's still stories of the flood. And we know that that generation was destroyed because of what? Because they had no boundaries. No gvura. No gvura. What's the destruction? What's the punishment? Water. Interesting. By the way, what keeps the water away from the land? Right? The beach. Right? You have the beach. The beach is a boundary to the land, right? And we don't want it to breach the land. There's natural boundaries. Why does water need boundaries? The nature of this particular midah, of love, of lust, and passion, is that it needs boundaries. And if you don't have boundaries with this particular midah, what ends up happening? All kinds of very bad things. Right? Now, you'll agree that as far as a midah goes, love is a very powerfully profound midah. It gets to do all kinds of crazy things, for better and for worse. And maybe that's why when we think about it, look at number 10 for a moment. If you think about water as far as an element, what is water? Water is composed of 2 hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom, H2O. The polarity of the water molecules due to the difference in electronegativity between the hydrogen and the oxygen leads to hydrogen bonding, which is responsible for many water's unique properties, such as cohesion, adhesion, and surface tension. Those 2 words, this is from like a chemistry textbook, okay? From a cohesion and adhesion, okay, are necessary traits when we're talking about water because they're similar to love, right? Water and love, there's a lot of similarities there. Sometimes you're feeling like filled with water, right? And you feel that way with love. It swells you up. Love swells you up. It makes you feel, it expands you a little bit. Water, when you pour it into a kos, when you're filling something, it expands it as well. There's adhesion and cohesion. Look at that little footnote over there. It says, the beauty of love is that when 2 individuals come together, not for selfish reasons or to indulge in their own benefit, but for the specific desire of completing the other, that is true love. It is also the movement and flexibility of water that symbolizes the flexibility of both parties, that allow them to grow together. Water easily mixes and seamlessly becomes one unit. It is the water part of us that allows us to become one with another. When I take this cup of water and I pour into another cup of water, what happens? Right? I have more water. It becomes one. And there's this deep correlation between water and our ability to mix with other people. For example, I had the zechut of officiating my 235th wedding this past Wednesday. And Baruch Hashem, a Monday night goer. And he's no longer with us. And we'll miss you. It was a profound, beautiful, ceremony for me personally. When I prepare my chatanim, I tell them that the greatest challenge of being in a relationship is reminding yourself that this other person is really an extension of yourself. So I give this like very corny example that I'm going to share with you tonight. So mechila, okay. I say to him, do you ever have that experience when you wake up in the morning and like you're rushing and like you stub your toe either against a dresser or your bed and it really hurts? You all have had that experience. I've had that experience. Now, you do that and you either yell all kinds of profanities or you scream or you hold the pain in, whatever it is, but either way, it's painful, right? Now, you never stop and look at your toe, point your finger and say, you stupid toe, how many times are you going to go? You never yell at your toe. And the reason why you never yell at your toe is because you understand, whether it's conscious or unconscious, that your toe is truly an extension of the self. Often, when I see married couples fighting, I think of the toe. Like, why is he screaming at her? Why is she screaming at him? If you're truly one, you would never scream at yourself. Why would you scream at somebody else? Oh, it's because you haven't really fulfilled the mission of love, of understanding that this person that you're committing to in a relationship is truly an extension of yourself. That what love is, and marriage is when 2 people are making the commitment to understanding that I am committing to make this person's needs and wants an extension of my own wants and needs. I wish I could take my phone right now, and I have like a bunch of text messages today. I deal with all kinds of interesting relationships. And Baruch Hashem, there's one couple that was going through a lot of hardship. And about 8 weeks ago, maybe 9 weeks ago now to be exact, he calls me up, he's like, Rabbi, it's over, I'm getting divorced. can't deal with this anymore. I can't. It's too hard for me. I don't want it. I'm on out. I'm like, no, give me one chance. Give me 2 weeks with you, and then let me help you restart your relationship. And I don't like to. I start, and then I find a way to get myself out of it. And I found the right person for these people. And he just came back. I actually did not see him. He prays here, and I didn't see him here in the last couple of days for the tefillah. And I was a little nervous. I'm like, just letting you know, I love you. Where are you? What's going on? Are you alive? Did you kill each other? What happened? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, he's texting me today. He's like, Rabbi, he's like, I want you to know. He's like, I spent the last 10 days on vacation for traveling. And I am so happy that I had these last 6 weeks with everything you set up for us. We finally get it. I finally understand that her issues are my issues, and that her problems are my problems, and my problems are her problems, and that we truly are one. And I can't believe I have to go through this whole entire crazy summer of fighting, this and that, back and forth, to get to this point to know what I always knew. Why was I so stupid? Right? And I'm like, oh, thank you so much for that. What a nacha call. That's the best message you could get. But he said it way more articulately than I am sharing with you. And that's why, look what Shlomo Melech says. This is such a beautiful pasuk. What does he say? He says, Kemaim hapanim lepanim, ken lev ha'adam le'adam. Does that have a different meaning to it? Why is he using water as a metaphor to talk about the way in which we see somebody else? Reflection. Right? We talk about the reflection. And it's interesting that water reflects. And therefore, when we talk about love and lust in a relationship, we talk about it in the most meaningful way, that the way in which you have true love is when you're able to see the other person inside of yourself. That's what this pasuk means. When you see true love, and the true love isn't like, oh, that person makes me happy, and it's about what I'm taking from that other person. That's not what true love is. True love is when you see that other person within yourself, you see their reflection in you. You open yourself up to their wants and their needs, and that's what kemaim al panim lepanim ken lev adam la'adam. That's exactly what he's talking about. Look at, and by the way, you think about it, like there is no relationship. He says to me, I hope I could hold on to this clarity, and I forward him this particular this number 13. I sent this to him today. I put this sheet together like about 4 hours ago. And he says, look at what Chazak Cohen says. He says, in the areas that a person struggles and repeatedly falls, is in those areas that he is destined for greatness. Right? You're struggling in the relationship. It's difficult. It's hard. Okay, my friends, be mindful that the places that you're struggling the most in life, that's the area, if you tackle, you will become the best version of yourselves. It's true in our relationships with people as well. It's true with our parents, with our siblings, with our friends and family, and so on and so forth. The areas that you are finding difficulty and challenge with, that is the area that you need to tackle right now. That's what Hashem wants from you. That's the counterweight that is designed to give you the ability to grow. And there's no better time to go ahead and be mindful of it right now. Right now, we're in the month of Elul, right? Each month has a different sense that is associated with it. For example, Tammuz is Re'iyah. Av is Shmi'ah. What is the sense of Elul? Asiyah. Action. This is the month of action. This is the month where Moshe went up and he spent 40 days to get the second set of Luchot. Slachti kidvarecha, the pasuk says. That God says to Moshe, I will forgive you. It's the month of Asiyah, the month of action. By the way, it's also the month of Virgo. It's the month of the Betulah, the Virgin. It's the month of us being able to tap into that purest parts of who we are. Because that part of us never ever fails. It never goes away. And therefore, when we talk about the things that are holding us back, it's the action that we need to take right now in the areas that we are struggling in. That's the action. The month of Elul is the month where you and I think a little bit deeply about the things that are holding us back, the place that we struggle, and it's in those areas we're asking Hashem in this month to give us the power to overcome those things so we can become what we need to be. Now, it's difficult to talk about lust and love and not talk about it in the context of children. Okay? So we know that the Pasuk tells us that Moshe and Aharon, right, had children, and Rashi over there tells us that I'm not sure why that Pasuk didn't make it in there, but it says that over here that the offspring of the righteous are their good deeds. That the true, right, children are not just biological children. Not all of us could have biological children, but some people be mindful that it's even the actions that we take right now, those positive actions, that's the perot, the fruit of our labor, so to speak. And therefore, there's something profound about this connection about, seeing how you and I are doing our chesed, our kindness, we're doing our tzedakah, we're volunteering. Those acts are the offspring of our righteous. Gemara Tanit says, as follows. He says, the life-giving power of water represents our ability to bring life into the world. Now, there are three keys that God retained in his own hands and did not entrust them into the hands of any messenger. We know the key of water, right? That's rain. The key of childbirth and the key of revival of the dead. The connection between rain and life-giving force of the childbirth is also emphasized in the second blessing of the daily Amidah. We say the main theme of the blessing is God's ability to give life and restore life. Yet it includes a line expressing gratitude for rain. Not an accident that there's a connection over here between these different aspects. We say V'yater Yitzchak, right? Yitzchak pleaded, L'Hashem l'noach ishto ki akarahi. And she's not the first person, Rivka, that was an akara. There's something about these people that have this deep desire to go ahead and bring life into the world that are struggling with that life force, right? Because that's part of their nisayon, to want to go ahead and bring the ability of watering the planet, so to speak, watering them with their deeds, with their children. Mekalka Chaim, gematria is 208. Same gematria as Yitzchak. There's a correlation here. Sefer Chinuch says as follows: is that the first mitzvah is mitzvah of purvu. Okay. He says on top over there's no number. The importance role of that having children plays in accomplishing one's life's mission is evident in that it is the first mitzvah given in the Torah to be fruitful and be multiply. Not everyone could have, again, biological children, but we're here to go ahead and do those good deeds. How do you get to do those good deeds? In a healthy relationship, if you're having biological children, you spend the time in trying to refine yourself so you could find someone that you could find a true mixture of waters and waters becoming one. And then in that process of two people becoming one, you have ahava, right? Gematria 13, same gematria as echad, becoming one, just like water does. When you're in love, you become one. That kind of clarity. You recognize that the other person is truly a reflection of yourself. And that's what we want. We want you to be mindful that the whole avodah of life here is to be fruitful and multiply. How do I be fruitful and multiply? I go out and I work on my midot. I work on my action. I do my good deeds. I try to become the best version of myself. If you're living life and you're finding yourself being sluggish, you're finding yourself being unable to be fruitful and multiply with your midot, it's simply because you are depressed. That's just the way it is. The Kutzker says that when you find people that throw off the yoke of heaven and they're no longer observant, it's not because they have a philosophical reason they're rejecting the Torah or Hashem. It's simply because they're depressed. He says happy people b'simcha, easily connect to God. When you're in a state of happiness b'simcha, like the Navi, in order for him to receive nevuah, he has to be happy. You can't connect to spirituality if you're in a depressed state. How do you get yourself out of a depressed state? You got to go out and do actions. Go do good deeds. Go volunteer. Go on a hike. You have to be physically involved in doing something to pull yourself out of it. You can't allow your mood to determine how you feel. The same is true in a relationship. When you're in a relationship, sometimes I come home in a bad mood. I'm very grumpy. I'm very grouchy. Right? I'm tired. I'm frustrated. I had a hard day. Right? They work me really hard over here. But I remind myself before I walk into my home that I don't allow my emotions to determine how I respond to my family and their needs. That's an avodah. And it's in that space where I'm feeling grumpy and I overcome that midah of feeling grumpy and depressed and tired or whatever it is. It's in that space that I grow to become something more. But that's me creating or expressing gvura. It's me taming the waters of my emotion, my lust. Your lust represents all the pleasures that you have. And often there is pleasure in kind of giving into your emotions. And that is not healthy at all. Someone who is a water bender, someone who is in control of water, okay, is someone who understands to create those boundaries necessary to allow the waters to kind of like to boil up, to water, but it's on your terms. It can't be the wind blowing it. It can't be the dam waters being unleashed and like ramming through something. Too much water will destroy something, right? If you have a massive plane, you want to water. I have a video on my phone on Motzei Shabbat. My daughter calls me. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. She's like, I just parked the car. She's like, you got to come downstairs. It's Rachel. And I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, go outside. I go, look. I go outside. It is a geyser of water coming out of my sprinkler system. I don't know what happened. Someone, I guess, knocked one of the things down, and they're just like shooting water into the air, like 30 feet in the air. Water's like flying into the sky in the street, all over the place. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do to shut the water down and the whole entire thing? Right? But water, if it's too much water, it destroys everything. Right? Destructive. Any extreme is unhealthy. And what does Hashem do? He creates a reality where He gives you what you need, and then He pulls back, like the tides, coming back and forth, back and forth. And it's designed on purpose. This simulation, this mitziyut, this reality is designed on purpose, the way it is, with all your frustrations and all the things you wish you could do away with, right? Those things are the perfect things that allow you to become something more. That's all Hashem wants. That's what God, the whole of Torah is about. How can I make humanity become something more? If you even look back at the founding fathers of this country, when they started the United States of America, the original founding fathers, the thing that inspired them the most was what? The Torah. There's a whole fascinating conversation between Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson about which image from the Torah should they use for the seal of the United States. Should it be Moshe splitting the sea, or should it be the fire, the cloud of glory and the fire at night, and the well of water in the daytime? Two different approaches. One with the supernatural God's hand giving us this beautiful land, and the other man's involvement in the miracle by stretching out his hand, but creating miracles through our actions. Right? Those are the conversations people were having here 270 years ago. Right? The Torah inspired them. And what inspired them? It inspired them because they saw a book that was interested in one thing. It was interested in giving people the greatest amount of pleasure. You think the Torah, some people think the Torah wants to remove and take you away from pleasure. It's the opposite. You know, my wife is a Kala teacher, and I do Chatan classes, and often I work with very secular groups of people. And I'm probably one of the few people in New York City that does Chatan classes for like a mixed audience. Like I'll do it with the Chatan and the Kala together. And I often do that because, you know, people are more secular and they're living with each other. And it's weird to have like a separate class with two people that are living with each other for Chatan and Kala. They're getting married, like they've been married, living like they're married for the last like 7 years. Why do you have to have separate classes? Like they know everything already, right? We're not talking about like an 18-year-old getting married or a 19-year-old getting married. So I'll often, you know, share with this couple, these interesting couples, this idea that like, you know, the idea of Shomer Negiah. And like, so how do you explain to a couple that has never even heard of the word Shomer Negiah? The idea, my philosophy is I don't care how religious or irreligious you are. I'm the rabbi. I'm going to teach you everything. I don't want you to ever say that, you know, my rabbi never told me. I didn't know that, right? So I sit there. I have a whole entire like 25-minute pitch on how to sell Taharat Mishpacha and Shomer Negiah and like all Hilchot Nida. And one of the things that I often reference is a study that was done. This was written up in the Wall Street Journal about 7 years ago. About they interviewed 10,000 couples, okay, married with 1 children or more. And the question that they asked this group of people is, how often are they intimate with one another? Okay, this is a mature group. We can have this conversation, right? Okay, good. So, how often are they intimate with one another? You're 10,000 couples, 1 child or more. What's happening at night, right? So the average of intimacy between a married couple that has it's 2 children or more, not 1 child, it's 2 children or more, is once a month. It's just too difficult. You have children, they're crying, this and that. No one's in the mood. Everyone's grumpy. Whatever it is, it's just nothing is happening. Once a month. So now what they found was during the study that there was a subgroup of people, okay, 67 people, who averaged like 6 times a month. Now, so the question is, well, what are these people doing, right? So it turns out that they all have certain things in common. Number 1 is they were all Jewish. Curious. Number 2 is they're all Orthodox. Number 3, they all follow the laws of Taharat Mishpacha. Right now, this is so curious because if you know the laws of Taharat Mishpacha, you know that like when a woman becomes a nida, when she gets her period, there's a separation between husband and wife. And that it's not just a separation, it's a separation for the days that she has her period until 7 days later, she counts her 7 days. That means minimum 4 days of waiting until her period comes to an end. And then 7 days on top of that, she then goes to the mikveh. So we're talking about 11 days where they're not engaged in any kind of intimacy, no physical touch, no nothing. That's a lot of separation, Rabbi. That's a lot of boundaries. Now, you think that more opportunity equals more opportunity, right? But that's not the case. The question is, why is that? Why is it that the people that are working on creating the boundaries in their relationship find a way to have more intimacy and connection than those people that could do it whenever they want to do it? Who says that more is more? Sometimes in life, my friends, less is more. And it's about creating boundaries. But we don't think like that because we're American. And Americans think about how I could have everything whenever I want, as often as I want, as quickly as I want, and so on and so forth. But you don't understand, my friends, that when you take whatever you want, whenever you want, there's no boundaries. You're like water. You waste it, it's gone. You spill out the water, it's gone, it's empty. How are you filling the cup? How are you preserving the lust, the love? How are you keeping that thing within you? If you're constantly spilling it out, there's nothing there. And I want you to know that when I have that conversation with these people, there's always one person in the relationship that is super interested in it, yeah, and the other is not so, right? And it's interesting, usually the guys are more interested than the girls. I don't know why that's the case. That's been my experience. You think it would be the opposite, right? But I will say that it doesn't really matter because the statistics are true. The nature of the body is that when it is exposed to any stimuli for long periods of time, what happens? You become numb to that stimuli. I leave my finger in the palm of my hand long enough, I won't feel it anymore. I leave my hand on my lap long enough, I won't feel it anymore. That's just the nature of the body. The nature of the body is that when you expose to any stimuli for long periods of time, you don't feel it. And therefore, the power of water, this idea, this midah of lust, of love, demands some type of boundaries. Think about it in terms of even children. It's not an accident that the act of puruvu, right, it's supposed to come out from the context of boundaries, about creating a boundary when you're together and when you're apart. Now, most parents, unfortunately today, that don't have a great parenting record, usually fail simply because they don't know how to set what for their children? Boundaries. The healthiest kids are the kids whose parents say, don't do that. No my iPad. No this. No that. It's the parents that set boundaries for us that make us the healthiest versions of ourselves. Isn't that interesting? You know, often I have a 25-year-old is my oldest, and I have a 7-year-old. She's the youngest, but she's really like 16. And often, and she's very smart and she's very articulate. She's very cute. And she makes really good arguments as to why she should have certain luxuries and whatnot. So it's very hard for me to say no to her because she's my bat zikunim, and I want to give her everything. I want to spoil her like crazy. And then what ends up happening is I have a picture of her being 25 years old. And I have her standing there saying, Abba, don't give in to her. Don't give her what she wants. You don't know what I'm going to turn into when I'm 25. You make sure you create those boundaries. I'm like, no, you can forget it. No, I'm not playing this game with you. You're not getting anything from me. Go to your room, go to sleep. It's over. It's those boundaries that create a happy, healthy human being. So look at number 18 for a minute. The Rav Moshe Feinstein in his Igrot Moshe and Even Ezer says as follows. He says, it is important to note that one does not fulfill their mission by simply adding numbers to the human population, but rather by taking an active role in building the next generation of human beings who will continue to repair the world and add to it with their own individual expression so they can continue the chain. The responsibility to have children doesn't end at the hospital room when a newborn child emerges. It ends in the hospital room when the soul of the parent departs, leaving behind those who inspired to continue to build their legacy. Every moment between is meant to care for, think about, give to those precious gifts that we were entrusted with. Most parents are not thinking like that. And that's exactly what we're not talking about, just giving for the sake of just pouring it out, but no, cultivating. The water is about cultivating. Do you agree with, the Gemara in Shabbat tells us that one of the things they ask us when a person dies is, aside from being honest in business, is did you engage in the midst of being fruitful or multiplying? It's not only talking about mitzvah night, it's also talking about the idea of having good deeds. Number 20, Sanhedrin, those who deny that biological children can still shine in the mitzvah just the same, right? By teaching Torah, this is the lineage number 21, this is the lineage of Noah. Noah was a righteous man. Midrash points out, after stating that this is the lineage of Noah, it does not actually mention the names of his children, but declares that he was a righteous man. They derive from there that the real progeny of a righteous people are their good deeds. Same idea, right? He was someone who was profound, amazing, but his children, not so great. His righteousness was an expression of his midot. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says the offspring of Aaron and Moshe, the two brothers, they continued only in the list of the children of Aaron. One who teaches Torah to his friends, his child, is considered as if he fathered them. The Maharshan Shabbat says, did you fulfill the mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply? Did you raise orphans and the needy? You think that it's only about biological children, my friends, you're making a mistake. It's not only about biological children, it's about something more, something much more profound. Last but not least, the Mishnah Perkei Avot says, Yosef ben Yochanan ish Yerushalayim omer, Yeh betcha patuach lervacha v'hiyu aniyim b'nei beitecha. You want to be someone that is actually able to fulfill a life of growth and spirituality and development. Are you the kind of person that opens up your door for the poor people in your community? Do you open up, do you create a space in the most personal, private parts of your lives to take in other people? Right? Because if the dam is always closed and there's no ability for you to share your water, so to speak, right? It's going to dry up. That's just the way it is. And therefore, when we think about our own lives as individuals, as people, with this midah of mayim, of water, okay, we have to be reminded of the fact that there is certain boundaries, of course, you need to have because you need to protect yourselves. You got to be smart. But at the same time, sometimes you have to allow those life-giving waters out as well. And therefore, the way in which we develop that progeny, the fruit, the way in which we are able to actually focus and channel the lust, the power of emotion and pleasure, is by having it focused on the development of humanity and society. If it's just a selfish taking for the self, if it's just a life of self-indulgence and pleasure, that's super destructive. We know what those people are. They're called narcissists. They're not very helpful to society. But the people that would actually think about how they can give back to the world are the people that are constantly building their families or figuring out a way of giving more and more back to humanity. I'm going to use this as a very crude example because he's an interesting person, Elon Musk. Anyone know how many children Elon Musk has? Yes. What? He has 10 children, right? That's a lot of children. It's not all from one wife, okay? But he could afford to have many, many wives, okay? Most men can't. But the idea is that here's someone whose whole entire essence is he wants to figure out a way of creating things for humanity. How do I solve, energy? How do I solve travel, space travel? How do I solve all these issues that he's trying to solve are there because he really genuinely wants to make the world a better place and profit it from the same time. But someone who's constantly thinking about how they could go ahead and flex their water midah, their lust midah, are the biggest builders on the planet. Yitzchak is not someone who should be associated with lust, right? Not someone who's associated with eating those big fatty meals and those high protein steaks, right? But he understands that his nature is that my nature is to be someone that is in gvura. My nature is to be the guy that has all those boundaries. And therefore, in order for me to find balance, I need to pull myself to the opposite extreme so I could find myself somewhere in the middle. Bezrat Hashem, next week we'll continue the conversation. Have an amazing week, everybody. Thank you so much for listening.